PK Subban has been showing a lot of love towards Jack Hughes and the New Jersey Devils. And speaking of the current Devils, let's talk about some of the more recent lineup changes that Lindy Ruff has made at a Devils practice. And let's hear from Lindy himself. We have a lot to break down in today's episode of Locked On Devils. Buckle up, everybody.
You're Locked On Devils, your daily podcast on the New Jersey Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, this is Bryce Salvador, and you're Locked On Devils with Trey Matthews.
Elliott scores! Oh, Stevens stepped up, nailed him. Brodor's got the puck. What a shot. The Devils win the Stanley Cup.
Alrighty now, what is up, New Jersey? Welcome back to the Locked On Devils podcast here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, college hockey play-by-play announcer, Devils writer for Pucks and Pitchforks, and also part-time credential media member, Trey Matthews. So in today's episode, we're going to talk more about the line combinations for the New Jersey Devils because courtesy of Amanda Stein, Lindy Ruff decided to shake things up during one of the more recent Devils practices. Speaking of which, we're going to play some sound bites from Lindy Ruff, courtesy of the Devils social media team, because Ruff had a lot to share in regards to what's been going on with this Devils team the last few games. And then to round it all off in the third and final segment, I'm going to talk about a former Devils player that's all of a sudden become more beloved, and that is PK Subban. It's been a while since I've mentioned Subban's name on this show, but he's been showing a lot of love towards the Devils, especially Jack Hughes, during his reporting career for ESPN. So I want to show some appreciation towards the Subbanator and basically just say, like, I am very appreciative for what he's been doing for the Devils and basically giving them a spotlight and just putting them on a much higher pedestal when it comes to the media. Because as we all know, the Devils are a small market team and they're not going to be given the credit that they deserve, because I think a lot of people don't view the Devils as a marketable franchise, but that's for the third and final segment. Let's talk about the more recent line combinations at a Devils practice. So once again, courtesy of Amanda Stein, she released what the Devils were rolling out at one of their more recent practices. So we're going to go down each and every line, and I'm going to share my thoughts as to whether I like it or not. Now, some key notes. There was no Erik Haula or Tomas Nosek because both of them are day-to-day and dealing with some injuries, so they are exempt from the lineup. So the top line, Timo Meier, Jack Hughes, Dawson Mercer. Now, I've been saying this the last few episodes. I actually love Meier on the same line as Hughes. Now, in one of my more recent episodes, I talked about the possibility of the Devils making Timo Meier a healthy scratch, because it seems like a decent amount of the Devils discourse is kind of fed up with Timo Meier's lack of production or just isn't meeting their standards. Now, if I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. In one of my bold take episodes, I said that I don't anticipate for Meier to be a 40-goal scorer. Now, somebody in the comment section asked me an important question, which is, if I don't expect for Meier to be a 40-goal scorer, what am I anticipating from him? Because why are we throwing all this money his way if he's not going to be a 40-goal scorer? And that is a legitimate question. It's something I should have discussed in the more recent episode, but I'm going to bring it up on today's episode. I expect for Meier's assist numbers to go way up, and I think he's going to create a lot more shot opportunities for someone like Jack Hughes, because we saw it during the playoffs in round one against the Rangers. I know I bring up this example a lot, but it's so true. In round one, Meier was creating a lot of good looks for not only himself but other people, and it came into full fruition in the second round against the Hurricanes because the offensive numbers started to show in the box score for Meier. And I think he could do something similar for Hughes, because he's a big body coming down the lane. That's going to open up a lot of opportunities for someone like Hughes. And I think it's going to generate a lot of assists for Meier. So once again, I don't think scratching Timo Meier is the answer for this Devils team. I personally believe that this Devils team is a lot better with Meier added onto the roster. He adds a lot of physicality and he adds a different dynamic for this roster. And once again, he makes the Devils less soft with his physicality. And I think it's going to rub off a little bit on Jack Hughes, because something I also brought up is that a lot of teams are going to be gunning for Jack Hughes because he's no longer the underdog player. He's going to have a giant X on his back. And remember a couple seasons ago when Jeremy Lawson basically roughed him into the boards and Hughes was sidelined for a few months, and then you have someone like Mason Gearston trying to come to the defense of Hughes and fight laws. And we don't need to talk about Gearston on the show right now. But anyway, the point I'm just trying to make is that Hughes is going to be a target for some opposition. And we've been seeing that the last few games. But with Meier on his line, I think that's going to add some more physicality. It's going to protect Hughes in a sense. And I think Meier's assist numbers are going to go up a little bit because we know that Hughes is a wizard with the puck. And Timo knows that he's off to somewhat of a slow start. But here's what he had to say to Devils media shortly after one of the more recent practices.
In years past, like last year, it took you to game 10 to score your first goal and you score 40. In years past, you've had some slow starts. Is that just a matter of remaining patient and fighting through it, and then once they start going, they start going?
I mean, last year is last year, and this is the new year, so I'm trying to not get too, I don't want to wait 10 games again until scoring a goal. But most importantly, we want to have a good start as a team, and we got to move forward and attack that next game. And, there's been some stretches I've had, but, you just try to learn from the past and do it better in the future. So I'm here. This is a new season, and I'm trying to do everything I can right now.
And as for Dawson Mercer, I'm seeing some improvement from Mercer, but that Hischier line of Meier and Mercer just wasn't cutting it for the Devils. They had a Corsi for percentage below 50 going into the Panthers matchup, the lowest amongst all the line combinations for the Devils. So something had to switch up. I know Toffoli, Hughes, and Bratt had good chemistry, but if I said it once, I've said it 1,000 times, something needed to change. Now, when looking at the second line of Toffoli, Hischier, and Bratt, Bratt is a bona fide scorer, and I think that can benefit someone like Hischier because I think Hischier is a very unselfish player, and he loves to set up his teammates. And with a sniper like Bratt, and Bratt has a lot of momentum going his way, I think we're finally going to see Hischier break into the scoring column sooner rather than later. And I think Bratt can definitely be a confidence booster for someone like Hischier. And then when you look at someone like Toffoli, he's also been getting a lot of good looks. Unfortunately, he hasn't been capitalizing on them. So I think Toffoli, with his veteran leadership, can help Hischier in a sense. Now, the third and fourth lines, once again, it's a little murky because you don't have Erik Haula into the lineup. You don't have Tomas Nosek into the lineup. So the third line that consists of Andre Palat, Michael McLeod, Alexander Holtz, I'm a little iffy on that. I know McLeod wouldn't normally be on that line. It would be Erik Haula. And Halla's been actually off to a pretty decent start. He already has a couple goals on the year, albeit one of them was an empty netter. But still, nonetheless, Haula is breaking into the scoring column relatively early compared to last year. But the thing is I'm just a little concerned for Holtz because is he going to be given the best opportunity to try to thrive? Is he going to be given the best opportunity to succeed? And I think the same could be said for Andre Palat. So I'm a little iffy on that line. I mean, Holtz was able to register an assist in the previous matchup, so we'll see what happens. But Andre Palat, I'm expecting for him to have a bounce back year, but he has to get it going. He really needs to show something for me. Then Tierney, Lazar, Bastian. Obviously, McLeod would be on the fourth line with Lazar and Bastian. And we know that Lazar is essentially the replacement for Miles Wood. And I've said it during the course of the summer, and I'll say it again. I think Lazar can be a lot more efficient compared to Wood because the thing about Wood is that I know he's more of an offensive threat compared to Lazar, but I think Lazar knows his role, bring physicality, bring toughness, bring sort of that aggressive style on the forward pairings. That's why Fitzgerald got him, because Fitzgerald was looking for a player of his caliber after the Timo Meier trade. So I think Lazar was someone that Fitzgerald had his eyes set on. So we'll see what happens. But I love Curtis Lazar. I loved the trade in the first place that got him here during the trade deadline period. So I am expecting some decent production from Lazar from here on out. Now, let's look at the defensive pairings because I think people are a little iffy on it, and rightfully so. So you got someone like Jonas Siegenthaler and Dougie Hamilton. We don't really need to worry about them all that much because in 3 game appearances, Siegenthaler has 3 assists, albeit it was in 1 game, but still that's a point per game essentially. And then as for Hamilton, he scored in the first couple of games, and similar to Hughes and Bratt, the offensive production has been coming off decently on his stick. But then we look at someone like Kevin Ball and John Marino. Well, here's the thing. Those are 2 defensive-minded defensemen, and it's just who's going to be that offensive player? Because one of the things that I raved about for the Devils during the summer is that they can find that balance. So I know Siegenthaler has 3 points in 3 game appearances, but Hamilton is the offensive player. Siegenthaler is the defensive-minded player. As for Ball and Marino, both of them, I guess if the preseason was any indicator, then I think they both can get some offense going their way. I would have more faith in Kevin Ball because he's still developing his game. I think John Marino has settled in nicely to his NHL role. But my thing is, like, I kind of am a little iffy on that, which is I know both of them are really good, but look at someone like Luke Hughes. Luke Hughes needs to work on his defense a little bit more. He loves to do that razzle-dazzle type of hockey, and he sort of has to because Brendan Smith is not going to generate the offense. And then again, Brendan Smith is not really going to generate the defense all that much either. But like I said, the past couple episodes, Smith has been somewhat solid according to the advanced analytics. I'm just going based on the numbers. So once again, do not come at me in the comment section. But Miller has been rotating. So I think it's sooner rather than later, we're going to see Colin Miller inserted into the lineup. And I think that's going to help balance things out just a little bit more. But I would like to see Hughes on the top four defensive pairing alongside with John Marino. Then you move Kevin Ball down to the third defensive pairing alongside with Colin Miller, because for Hughes, he needs a defensive-minded defenseman because Luke is not really defensive-centric. In fact, his defense hasn't been all that good the last few games, and I was a little disappointed to see that because it seemed like he did improve it, and it was on full display during the playoffs, but he's still young. He's still developing. He's going to make those mistakes. We saw it during preseason. So we'll see what happens, but I think Miller being inserted into the lineup at one point or another could actually help the Devils in some way, shape, or form, but we'll wait and see. And then as for the goaltending tandem, Vanacek and Schmid, it's flip a coin at this point, and I think the Devils are still trying to figure out who are they going to rock with throughout the rest of the season. So we've been seeing Vanacek get some reps. Obviously, he has appeared in 2 of the 3 games so far, and then Schmid got the start against the Coyotes because it was the second game of a back-to-back. But I like both goalies. You can't go wrong either way. I don't think we can blame the loss against the Coyotes on Schmid. I don't think we can blame the loss against the Panthers on Vanacek. I think both of them have been very solid. Now, were there a few goals I'm sure that they would like to have back? Absolutely. But at the same time, the defense in front of them has been giving them little to nothing. So I like these line pairings for the Devils so far. So for the most part, especially on the top 6, I like what Lindy Ruff is doing. Basically spread out your options a little bit more because you can't just rely on Hughes and Bratt to be carrying a boatload of the offense and they're on the same line. That's not going to give you much long-term success. And once again, you got to find new chemistry. Bratt even said it during one of his more recent media availabilities that when you switch up the lines, it can definitely give the players more energy. So I think that's the one thing that the Devils need. They just need a spark. They need a flip of the switch. They just need to change something up, and maybe this is the step in the right direction. We're just going to have to wait and see what Lindy decides to roll out on Friday. But for the most part, at the more recent practice, I am loving these line combinations so far. One thing, and it's just a minor pet peeve, but Brendan Smith is a left-handed defenseman. Hughes is a left-handed defenseman. Get Miller into the lineup, move Hughes back over to the left-handed side, and we'll see what happens. But that's just a minor pet peeve. I don't know how you guys actually feel about that, but just something I want to bring into the light. Now, before we continue, I want to tell you guys about Sleeper because I am in the midst of fantasy football, but I love hockey as well. As you guys know, that's why I cover the Devils for the Locked On Podcast Network. So Jack Hughes scores a hat trick, Devils win the Stanley Cup, and if you want to win 100 times your money, play daily fantasy hockey on the Sleeper app. These are all possible scenarios that I just listed, but in order to have a chance of winning big, you need to play daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper as the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our top choice for daily fantasy sports, especially daily fantasy hockey. With Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests with studs like Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, Jesper Bratt, even Timo Meier once he gets it going. All you need to do is pick more or less on the stats for these stars. Choose stats like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, and more. You heard me, Devils fans. 100 times payout on Sleeper. So start paying attention and get your picks right so you can win big. Use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's Locked On NHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Okay, so the past few episodes, you guys have been hearing my thoughts on how the Devils should roll with their line combinations in their next matchup against the New York Islanders on Friday. But let's hear from Lindy Ruff. Let's hear what he had to say in regards to how he thinks the line combination should work for the Devils moving forward. So here's what Lindy had to say at a recent practice when Amanda Stein, the team report for the Devils, asked him, like, what's his mindset when it comes to just swapping the lines and maybe giving the Devils some much needed new energy. Check it out.
What's sort of your thought process behind switching those two the two centers on those two top lines with Nico and Jack?
You know, the fact that we've been able to kind of alternate pieces throughout all last year, we're going on the road, makes it a tougher matchup for opposing teams. Trying to get it to where we can be a deeper attack, and if you're looking at trying to defend, which line do you want to defend against? And the fact those guys have played together before too.
Okay, so the three things I want to highlight from that soundbite is that he said he wants to make the team deep. He wants teams to basically have trouble defending them. And some of those players, like he mentioned, have played together. And let's look at that top six for the Devils once more. So on the top line, Meier, Hughes, Mercer. Then on the second line, Toffoli, Hischier, Bratt. So once again, Hughes and Bratt have been the go-to point scorers for the Devils the last few games. So you break them up a little bit and you're giving yourself some more options. And then for Timo Meier, you're pairing him alongside Hughes. Maybe that can help him in some way, shape, or form. We'll see how that forms. But basically, what Lindy is trying to do is what he did a little bit last season, because we saw the success and we saw the good tandem pairing between Meier and Hughes work out a little bit during the playoffs. In fact, it was one of the few highlights the Devils had in the second round against the Carolina Hurricanes. And then when we look at that Hischier, Bratt, and Toffoli line, basically Toffoli is taking the spot of Tomas Tatar, because we saw Tatar have great chemistry with Hischier, and obviously Mercer was on that line alongside with Hischier. But once again, Hischier and Mercer just aren't clicking similar to what they did last year. So, yeah, you got to break them up a little bit. Maybe getting a sniper like Bratt can help Hischier a little bit. Bratt has some fire going his way. He has some decent momentum. So I like that. Stick to that. But Toffoli is an upgrade over Tatar. Now, how does he convert on his scoring chances? I don't really know, because he is creating those looks for himself. But he'll start to find the back of the net, or he'll get an assist like he's been doing the last few games sooner rather than later, and the point production will start to go up a little bit more. But I liked what Lindy basically said, which is the team is going to become deeper. You're giving yourself some more options. You don't want to be too top heavy, and basically you're giving teams a headache in terms of trying to defend. And some of these players have in fact played together. So particularly Meier, Hughes, Mercer also does have some decent chemistry with Hughes. They played alongside together a decent amount of the games last year. Then Hischier and Bratt, obviously, they have some good connection as well. Toffoli, he's still trying to form it, but he's obviously a veteran. He's been around the block a few times. He's swapped teams a few times. So I think Toffoli knows what to do, and I have a lot of faith in him. And then for the defensive pairing, Siegenthaler, Hamilton, love it. Maybe put Luke Hughes back with John Marino, love it even more. We saw that work out during the Stanley Cup playoffs against the Hurricanes. And then for Kevin Ball, I know he deserves a bigger role, but for the sake of the team, put him on the third pairing defensive role. But that's just my 2-cent opinion. Now, here's what Lindy had to say in terms of just trying to find a way to capture some more momentum, so that way the Devils can just rack up more consistency, so that way they're a more efficient team. Here's what he had to say.
You look at last year, the team started 0-2, 3-3, then went on that run. You look at this as kind of finding your way, no panic. You know, it's just about tinkering some things and finding what can get this guy going.
Well, I think you look, we've got a lot of different pieces. You know, we're counting on different players in different situations now. We've got a couple D that we're counting a lot more out of them in penalty killing and special teams roles. We got a couple forwards up front again that you know, the pieces have changed. So we're finding our way. We're, you know, although it was a good preseason, we know that once the season hit, the game has been a lot different. The intensity has been really ramped up.
The one thing I've been preaching on this show is that Devils fans, including myself, we just got to be a little patient, because this isn't the Devils' first rodeo. We've seen them struggle before to open up the season, but like I said, they're able to find a way. We saw them struggle to open up the playoffs against the Rangers. They found a way. So the one thing I could say, and I love what Lindy was basically preaching, which is like, take it one game at a time. Just patience. Not everything happens overnight. No one's going to clinch a spot tomorrow. Like some of the top-notch teams are off the slow starts. I mentioned the Florida Panthers in one of my more recent episodes. They are the reigning Eastern Conference champions, and prior to playing the Devils, they got off to an 0-2 start. Look, a lot of the top-notch teams get off to slow starts, and I think that's been very evident to open up the season. I saw someone left a comment on one of my more recent videos. I think Erik Karlsson of the Penguins only has 1 point through 3 games. So you think the Penguins are freaking out about that? I mean, I don't think so. Look, slow starts happen, guys. Not everything's going to happen overnight. Even if the Devils started out 3-0, that doesn't really guarantee anything. Because like I said, no one's going to clinch within the next few weeks. We're not even a quarter way done with the season. We're just beginning, and you guys want to put this season to bed already. So, and you want to scratch Timo Meier. You want to make all these drastic changes. You want to trade Timo for like a 6th round pick at this point. Just chill, be patient. Don't worry. The Devils will be just fine. I really hope so. I'm not going to promise anything. I'm not going to guarantee anything because I can't see into the future. But if I had to bet my bottom dollar, I think the Devils will be just fine from here on out. And speaking of fine, I'm sure you guys, after a long days of work, want to see the Devils at the Prudential Center. So let me get you hip to Game Time. So what are some of the things that I like about the Game Time app experience? Well, last-minute tickets, flash deals, zone deals, easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area, views from all seats in the venue, lowest price guaranteed, event cancellation protection, job loss protection, etc. So see the views from your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event, and even an hour after it starts. It's the best place to find last-minute seats. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And speaking of guaranteed, let me tell you about eBay Motors. So I don't know how many of you know, but I'm actually a big fan of NASCAR. So passion, drive, and patience, what brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered with over 122 million parts. For your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Okay, so to close out today's show, let's talk about an uplifting subject, a subject that I've been loving the past week or so, and that is PK Subban on ESPN. Now, I know he's been on ESPN for quite some time. I know he's basically gotten himself very involved in the media world after his playing career, but I just need to show some love to PK Subban, a name that I have not mentioned all that often on this show ever since he retired, but he definitely deserves a lot of love from the Devils discourse because PK Subban has gone to bat for Hughes multiple times throughout the last week or so. Here's the first example. On opening night against the Detroit Red Wings, obviously that game was exclusively on ESPN Plus. During one of the intermissions, PK Subban was basically discussing Devils hockey, and it was brought to his attention that Hughes had finished 8th in the MVP vote race just a few months ago. And to his surprise, he responded by saying, 8th? Who's voting? Because he said that Hughes deserved to be a top-notch Hart caliber player. Now, he showed some respect to the opposition, so he showed some respect to, obviously, Connor McDavid, David Pastrnak, but he said that Jack Hughes deserved more MVP votes because of something that I've been talking about on the show, which is the narrative. So Subban took to the X app to basically express his frustration towards the MVP vote process. And basically, here's what he had to say in regards to Hughes becoming possibly the second player in Devils history to win the Hart. Check it out.
Last year, I was ticked off. Jack should have been in the MVP conversation. He wasn't. Not to take anything away from Tkachuk, Pasternak, or McDavid. All very deserving, but I thought he should have been there. Pulled the Devils out of the basement into the playoffs. 7 games, beat the Rangers, led the team. I thought he should have gotten that nod. He was an MVP. No question about it. So what does he do? He picks up from where he left off last year, gets his 3rd career goal in a season opener, 2nd multi-goal game in a season opener, 1st in Devils franchise to do so. The first goal, though, if Jack gets 100 points this season, he should be in the MVP conversation. And here's why. It's the fear factor. Jack can do things that not a lot of players can do on this planet. Go back to November 26, 2022 against the Capitals. He does this. Fast forward to yesterday's game. He does it again against Husso. If Jack Hughes gets 100 points this year, because of the fear factor, because of his skill, because of the team, he should be in the MVP conversation.
And it didn't stop there. He recently appeared on the Pat McAfee show, and he showed a lot of love towards Hughes because he talked about a particular fight that happened in his last season in the NHL, which basically the Devils were playing against the Islanders, and Oliver Wahlstrom had a bit of a hit on Hughes, a little too below the belt to PK's liking. So he hunted down Wahlstrom and took off the gloves and gave him a right, left. Down goes Wahlstrom. And basically, Subban obviously had to go to the box. And Subban was basically describing what had happened in the most PK-like way possible. Because I think it's evident that PK has always been a character in regards to just describing things or just presenting himself. So here's a little bit of a clip from that show of PK talking about that Wahlstrom scuffle he had a couple seasons ago. Check it out.
It started with someone not packing a lunch and getting served. So I'll let you pick pack a lunch. Yep.
Hold on, here it comes.
Yep. Well, you can't touch Jack Hughes. You do that, and you get a 2-piece combo.
Hey. Jeez Louise.
I will say this, though, Pat. I will say this. They got some killers on that Islanders team, and it's a good thing that Wes McCauley and I are pretty tight. He did me a favor and gave me a 2-10, and I got ejected from the game. I don't think it was intent to injure, but you got to be more responsible than that. Jack Hughes is a star player. You're up 3-0. It's a 0-0 game. We're not going to the playoffs. Wallstrom's a young kid, and he learned his lesson the hard way.
Dropped him.
That's the 2-piece combo and the extra shot down because you touch our star player. You're not supposed to hit the guy when he's down, but I gave him an extra shot.
Now, PK showing a lot of love towards Jack has been nothing new because we saw it on full display during All-Star Weekend. We saw both of them hang out during the course of the summer a couple times, not only this year, but last year. At one point, I think they were both on a helicopter trip. Both of them were at some sort of restaurant. So PK and Jack just basically have an interesting dynamic friendship. And PK is sort of like the older brother that we always wanted. So I know PK's tenure with the Devils has been somewhat forgettable because let's face it, when the Devils attained him, he was pretty much on the other side of his better days. He wasn't the player that he once was with the Montreal Canadiens or the Nashville Predators. He wasn't the player that helped lead the Predators to the Stanley Cup Finals. He wasn't that same player that won the Norris Trophy. PK was at the end of his career a little bit, and it got to a point where the Devils tried anything to get rid of him. They tried offering to retain a chunk of his salary. No teams were biting. No contending teams were biting. They tried exposing him in the Seattle Kraken expansion draft. That's why they pursued Ryan Graves, because in case Subban was hypothetically picked up by the Kraken, the Devils wouldn't be X amount of dollars away from the cap floor, not the cap ceiling, the cap floor. But obviously the Kraken decided to select Nathan Bastian with their pick from the Devils. But digressing a little bit, basically fans, media, a lot of people, despite PK's lovable personality, despite him showing a lot of passion for New Jersey, they just wanted him gone because the playing style just wasn't working out. It wasn't on full display. And I think a lot of people weren't afraid to label him as overrated, just given the amount of money he was being paid. But After everything, especially with PK now doing stuff for ESPN, appearing on First Take now and again, basically educating Stephen A. Smith, Molly Karam, Mad Dog, Shannon Sharp, whoever's on that show, or being a part of the NHL on ESPN telecast, whatever the case might be, PK has just been a character, and he goes to bat for the Devils, and I love that, and I think the entire Devils discourse should really show some appreciation towards PK, because let's face it, unfortunately, the Devils, they're in New Jersey, small market team, not the most likable franchise just because of how the Devils used to play during their championship runs, because a lot of people say that they ruined hockey with the trap defense. A lot of people did not like the personalities of Scott Stevens or Marty Brodeur, but nonetheless, they were still very good players, and no one can deny that. But a lot of people just didn't like what they did, I guess, off the rink, and also Stevens just was not afraid to knock some people's heads off. But digressing a little bit, I think it's safe to say that the Devils get the short end of the stick when it comes to getting some decent recognition and also just some appreciation, especially for being an East Coast team, because you got East Coast teams like Boston, New York, Philadelphia. It's not just in hockey, it's in all sports in general, where they're big markets, but yet for New Jersey, they don't get the credit that they deserve. They have 2 NFL teams playing at MetLife Stadium, but the Giants and Jets do not claim New Jersey. They claim New York, the state across the Hudson River. So I'm loving what PK is doing right now, and I'm glad that he's showing a lot of love to the organization that he played his final years in the NHL with. It wasn't memorable, it wasn't pretty, and it was a love-hate relationship. But PK, I just want to say on this show, thank you for what you do for the Devils and basically giving the Devils a platform, giving them a voice, and being entertaining as well. PK is just a stand-up kind of guy. I enjoyed seeing him once again appearing on various shows on ESPN, doing his own PK Place segment. It's just been enjoyable to watch PK thrive in his second career and just give the Devils a lot of love. So let me know what you guys think. What do you think about the line combinations? What do you think of the comments made by Lindy Ruff? And also, tell me what you like about PK Subban, because given how his playing career went with the Devils and comparing it to the amount of love he's showing towards the organization, I think all can be forgiven between PK and the Devils fan base, because it's just like, yeah, you ate up a chunk of the salary, and yes, you were a tad bit overrated, and yes, you were a disappointment, but the fact that you're still doing what you're doing and just showing Jack Hughes and others a lot of love, I really enjoy it. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening on a podcast streaming service, hit me up on my personal X Page app at TreyMatt4 or the show's X Page app at Locked On Devils. As for today's episode, that's all the time I have for you. So continue to stay safe. Have a wonderful day, New Jersey. Go Devils. I'll catch you guys in the next episode. Thanks for listening once again.